Live from their home studios, please welcome the hosts of DevCentral Connects, Boo Lamb and Jason Rom.
Well, hello, DevCentral community. My name is Boo. I am your DevCentral community evangelist and your host for today on DevCentral Connects. Really excited for the subject that we're going to talk about today. And if you saw any of the promo stuff, I'm from Canada, and alongside me today will be Jason Rom, and he's from the US. And so we're at this little midway point between Canadian Thanksgiving, which was in October, and US Thanksgiving, which is later in November. And so what better way to kind of celebrate this midway point between these two beautiful North American countries, but to talk about not F5, but to talk about technology that we're thankful for. And so we have a number of things that we're going to chat about today, and I think it'll be interesting. We've got some stuff that people have brought up on our Twitter pages as well. We put out some notices on there to mention, things that you're thankful for. So I'm looking forward to having that conversation. I'll also drop a mention of Happy Diwali for anybody who celebrates that. I know we have a number of listeners and watchers that are over in other parts of the country or other parts of the world, but also people all over that celebrate Diwali as well. So happy Diwali to everyone that celebrates that. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on my esteemed co-host, Jason Rom. Jason, how you doing?
I am doing quite well. Thank you, Boo. I'm excited to be here. The shift of having some shows on and some shows off, it's nice to have the break, but it's also like, hey, I kind of miss that. It's a lot of fun to do these. And so, on my off weeks, I'm especially when it's like a topic, I'm like, ooh, I really want to be on for that one. And I miss out. So yeah, glad to be here.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Just like everybody else, if you're not on the show, we'd love to have people in the comments as well. So anytime people, you're watching, you feel like you have something to say, please do, drop something into the comments. Oh, I have a different banner for that. Drop something into the comments, and we'll try to respond to that stuff either at that point in time, or we kind of park some of those things to the end of the show to bring up as well and have general discussions around it. So we love the interaction, even if it's one of our hosts that are not on and they want to interact because they miss being on. That's totally welcomed as well. So, Jason, I've got a question for you here. I know you guys always start off with questions, and something that John will often pop up on you. And my question for you today is, and I know you started your career at, I believe, an ISP, if I'm not mistaken.
My private sector career, that'd be true. Yep.
Okay, cool. So my question for you is whether you are a CatOS guy or an iOS guy, or neither.
Ooh, both. But you're talking if I have to choose one?
It could be that.
Yeah, iOS, definitely. The Cisco version of iOS. So, for those of you who maybe have never been in the Cisco world, they also have an iOS thing out there.
Yes.
Unlike the Apple version of that. Yeah, definitely was an iOS guy. In fact, and this predated my commercial career. I was an employee for the federal government through the Air Force right out of college. And in one of my early rotations, I went down to the Base Network Control Center at Scott Air Force Base here in Illinois. And the techs had introduced me to this thing called a router. And I was like, whoa, what is this? It's like, you mean I can like block and add permissions and route stuff, and I can share routes? And it's like, I was hooked. It was like, yeah, this is cool. This is what I want to do.
Oh, awesome. So I bring this up because there was this post. Oh, let me zoom it in a little bit here. There's this post by DevCentral MVP, Sebastian Maniac. And he's got a great, I love these O'Reilly books that they fake out here, keeping your 6509 on forever, because I'm sure there's tons of them out there still in production because they're such a workhorse. And my reply, now I stole this from Twitter. I can't remember where I found it, but I save good memes when I see them. And so my reply was, will you zoom in? Does it run CatOS? Yeah. little feline sitting on top of this 6509 here, not plugged in, so it's not warming the cat at all. But for those who remember CatOS, I had my first job in the IT industry. I was doing some network administration, and we had mostly about half of our gear, actually, I should say, was on iOS at the time, and then part of my job was going around and cleaning up some of the other CatOS stuff and getting those up to iOS. So that was fun. The first time I was on it, I was like, what is this? I hadn't used any CatOS. I had not learned. So I took Cisco networking, CCNA, and at that point, they weren't really covering CatOS at that point. That was in the mid 2000s.
Yeah.
But I think the previous version was covering CatOS. So I missed that and then had to go back and learn CatOS because we had a number of pieces of equipment in our environment that still had CatOS on it.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute since I've been into even Cisco iOS, but if I recall correctly, there was a transitional stage to where the L3 up and the L2 stuff on the catalysts were they weren't quite merged, and so you could like break into a CatOS shell even from your iOS to be able to do the L2 stuff before they finally got even the L2 stuff up at iOS. And maybe I'm not remembering that correctly, but I kind of feel like there was a lot of pain and suffering in that transition time for me. But yeah, I loved working on all the L3 and down stuff back in the day. And then I had opportunity to move up the stack. And then for me, it's all about the learning journey. I learned at that time anyway, there's a lot of new networking stuff now that wasn't then, but there was a period of time where the network side kind of stagnated. There wasn't a whole lot of innovation in L3 and down for a while. And I have to be learning something or I get kind of bored, and I'm not an effective employee for my employer if I'm bored. And so, I had an opportunity. I started working with Firewalls, and then I was doing a conversion from, I think it was a Cisco PIX firewall to an ASA firewall. And when I did that, I did a coding project because they gave me a lot of time to convert all that stuff, but it really was just a nomenclature change in interfaces and a couple different things. So it whipped out, and I hate on Perl a lot right now, or these days, but it was Perl, and I was like, hey, I think I could just code that, and what they gave me a lot of time to solve, I solved in a day. And of course, there was some testing and all that involved, but I took what was supposed to be about a 9-month project and wrapped it up in a few weeks because one day of just thinking and through the issues and solving it with code. So then that was it for me to kind of move up the stack.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I remember, going back to your first point there too. I remember that transitional iOS to CatOS, and moving in between the modes. If anybody listening has the answer for what that mode was, feel free to drop that into the chat because neither of us are remembering that one right now, and love to knock that one out.
Yeah, that's definitely not in the hot cache in my brain anymore. I see Peter dropped a question to IQ Blackhawk, and yes, any of your fave tech with Big IP, its modules, top 5 this month on the 23rd. I think we're doing it. That's going to be our gratitude towards F5 tech, and so I'm going to be actually each of us will be picking one part of F5 technology, and it could be a big thing like LTM or GTM, or it could be a feature or function. Like I'm a big fan of auto last hop. That's not going to be mine, but auto last hop is very simple in nature, but pretty powerful in what it can actually execute for you, independent of routing tables. So talking about those kinds of things, I think is gonna be a great conversation.
Totally. A lot of people think auto last hop is black magic, so I'm looking forward to hearing your explanation of it, Jason.
Yeah, there you go.
Cool. You
All
had a
right.
question too,
Go ahead.
Jason, or you wanted to chat about that later?
About Auto
You,
Laptop?
no, you had a. Did you have a question too, or you want to park that
Oh,
for later when
yes,
we're
thank
talking
you.
about tech?
I did. So, we're talking about technology that we're thankful for. And my question back to you is, historically, the simple machines, there's 6 simple machines that kind of built technology up from like the beginning of time, right? And so, do you know what those 6 simple machines are?
Wow, that's a great question. I got to think. One is the wheel.
Yep, wheel and axle. That's one.
Okay, wheel and axle. Let's see. What else do we got here? Wow, I don't know. Actually, beyond that, I'm stuck at wheel.
Okay, so yeah, if any of the rest of you, off the top of your head, drop them in. Oh, there you go. Peter's on it.
Yeah.
Yep, the levers, wheels, and so you think about, today. You're out walking, through your city or your town. You have these big giant cranes and big machines doing stuff. We didn't have any of that back, 1,000 years ago or even 200 years ago. And so, how did they accomplish things like building the pyramids and Stonehenge and all these, ancient wonders of the world? And yeah, simple machines. You talk about using little wheels to be able to slide those massive boulders across, the desert in Egypt and whatever. And so yeah, simple machines. So, we talk about technology that we're thankful for. I'm thankful for that. Like when you're moving from house to house, the inclined plane to get you up into your moving truck. Very thankful for that. Those simple things that we take for granted. Really grateful for that kind of technology.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I was going to say my next one I was going to say was lever, so I should have actually just thrown that out there, but I actually, yeah, I missed that one. That's all right. We will. I've learned something new for today, so that is great. So today we're talking about technology that we're thankful for. A couple things that we've just chatted about now, and I also put this out to Twitter. And Peter put this out to the F5 DevCentral Twitter, so you want to follow that at DevCentral. I've put it out on my Twitter as well at Boolam. And Jason is just at Jason Rom. Put that out as well. And so we had a couple of mentions on there, and I'll bring up those ones in a little bit here. But I think my first mention that or my first piece of technology that I want to talk about is going to be the Find My function that Apple has built into phones and their devices. So phones, laptops, and what I did not know, I'm trying to bring this up right now. What I did not know was that AirPods are included in that. And so I've pulled up my Find My thing maybe twice a year, and I never noticed AirPods on there until the last few weeks after moving to iOS 15. And I think the reason why I noticed it in iOS 15 is it actually notifies you when you leave your AirPods away from you. My AirPods are actually often in my pocket. They're small enough that they can fit in there. Guys are, wearing jeans or whatever or shorts, they'll always have pockets, whereas women usually don't have pockets or they have minimal pocket space. So as a guy, I always have my AirPods on me. And then when I leave my AirPods behind somewhere, it'll say, "Hey, did you know that you left your AirPods behind?" Well, guess what? This past weekend, me and the family, we go up to Squamish. So I'm in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. We go up to Squamish for a little bit of a weekend away for my daughter's birthday, trying to find some creative stuff to do with lots of restrictions and whatnot. We go stay in a hotel for a couple nights. And so leaving the hotel, we're driving down the Sea to Sky Highway back to Vancouver, and my wife pulls up her phone and she's like, "Oh, this is weird." And I was noticing it as well with mine, is that it was giving her a false positive saying, "Oh, you've left your AirPods behind back in Squamish." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm getting tired of these false positives," because I've actually gotten a few of them as well on my phone. Well, turns out it was not a false positive. We got home and she could not find her AirPods. She has AirPod Pros, which are the the higher level ones. So I believe in the US, they're $250, and up here in Canada, they're $329. So we were a little bit, freaked out at that point. But we knew that they were there. And so two things. First of all, you open up the app, you can set it to lost mode such that when you're pairing your AirPods, they have to connect to iCloud. And so when they're in lost mode, that person that wants to reset them, connect them to their device, they're going to have to sign into their iCloud account. It's going to immediately tell them that, hey, these ones are lost, and here's the phone number of the owner of them. So hopefully they're a great person, and they're going to contact you. And then also, we knew the last location that it was near her phone was at that hotel because it gave GPS coordinates, which was awesome. And so called up the hotel. They they went and looked in the room. Nobody had stayed in the room yet, and so they went and looked in the room, and they couldn't find him on there. Still were scratching their heads. And so the next day, my wife actually makes a drive back out to Squamish, which is about an hour and a half away, makes a drive out there and immediately finds them. She didn't get to go through the whole, you can make the AirPods actually make an audible noise, and so that you can track them that way. And she actually just found them under the curtains, but it would have been cool to be able to do that. But that was my first technology that I'm thankful for, is GPS location on even devices like headphones.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. With the AirPods, do they put a GPS tracker in the case, or is it in the each of the little earbuds?
So it's not, it's not actually that the AirPods themselves have GPS in them. It's that they'll kind of piggyback off of your phone's GPS wherever it last was, and then it knows that, hey,
Ooh.
these are separated, and the last known spot that these were together was here.
Gotcha. Okay,
That makes
that's
sense.
pretty cool. Yeah. So I have an totally unrelated question to tech, but while you were talking about where you went to Squamish, is that what you said?
Yep.
So in the Seattle area, I know that when we would go skiing, we'd go to Squamish or through there or whatever, and then there's Snohomish or Squamish. What does Mish mean? I'm not familiar with that term. Is it like just a native thing around there, or where did that come from? Do you know the root of that suffix?
That's a good
If you don't,
question.
that's fine. I
It's
was
got
just
to be
curious.
that. I don't know, but yeah, there are. I actually
Peter,
didn't
get
pick
on
up on
Google
that
and look that up for
commonality.
us.
Yeah. We got the research team at DevCentral. Hopefully they can check that out. Squamish, Sammamish,
Yeah.
Snohomish.
What does that suffix mean? Is that So yeah. So before I get into my first one, actually is going to piggyback on yours a little bit. The IQ Blackhawk came back with asked what's your favorite big IP model or module, is LTM, ASM, APM, basically everything you need for a clean network edge. So there you go. So yeah, we have your list. Tune back in on the 23rd and you can get our list. And then there you go, Leslie. Thank you. It is from the Cilician language, means people of. Okay, cool. I didn't know if it was like a geographic thing or what. So that is
Love
good.
it.
Yeah. So I wanted to
research
piggyback
team.
on yours just with GPS in general. You talk about locating lost things, but also just location details in general. GPS has been a tremendous thing for hiking or driving, obviously mapping and getting from point A to point B. I still recall the days when we were going to go on a family trip, and you pull out the road atlas and you're flipping pages from state to state to state. And then on each state page, if you're going to go into a city, they've got that blown up, and so you're like tracking in the minuscule data of like, okay, we need to turn on this street. None of that do you need with GPS now, and it's fantastic. And even technology like farmers use with GPS, all the tech that's built into tractors, and how they can actually be taking soil samples as the tractor is planting or disking the farm, and that data, as those samples are taken, can be immediately uploaded to either the farmer or whoever owns that, that land, and they can do, oh wait, we might be a little bit light on lime, we need to go ahead and apply some lime to that. And because ultimately, and I guess I'll piggyback onto one of my other topics, is just food science in general. The technological advances in food sciences that allow us to have bumper crops when we make things. Of course, there's negative to some of that, right? You've got some of the pesticides and herbicides that end up making us less healthy. But some of the advancements in food sciences related to location, or just related to one of the things that was shared with me on Facebook when I put this out was pasteurization. And that's Louis Pasteur from, was that in the 1800s? I don't recall when that was, but the ability to pasteurize milk and eggs and all those things to make them a little bit healthier.
Yeah. You know what? So going back to your GPS example there too, a couple of scenarios that I'm going to raise up here. It actually ties back to F5, because on Tuesday we had At the Edge, our Tuesday show covering edge computing topics, cut to the edge. The guest that we had on, Nick Arkusha, his team built out these guided walkthroughs for the Volterra platform and how you can use it, or how you can get up to speed on it really quickly. And in their example, they had an app that was selling watches, and it was the feature was that, hey, I have this website on here, and I want to add on the ability for somebody to do a store locator within the application. The function's there already, but the store locator would be nice to add on. And we want that to be something that's actually kind of located close to the user. So we can push out that function specifically for a store locator using your GPS coordinates over to whatever regional edge makes sense for that application to be closer to. So let's say you're dealing internationally with your application and you want to push out the store locator function. Maybe it's only for certain locations. Maybe you only want it to go out to North America, so you can actually push out that function, just to certain sites. So I think that's a cool scenario. And the farming scenario has come up a lot actually with IoT and with edge computing as well, because your scenario there of, hey, we need to add more ingredients into whatever we're doing to treat the fields. Well, maybe some of that involves compute, and maybe some of that needs to happen immediately. Like, there's real-time data being pulled from whatever devices that they have out there. Hey, we need this compute and these calculations brought back to us immediately. Well, if we have edge computing and we have a node that's nearby, maybe that node is a customer edge that's on that farm site or within that state at least. Okay, now we can get that, real-time feedback into the soil immediately, because, hey, who knows, like having a few minutes worth of latency or waiting for compute to come back, or a day's worth, that could be acres of affected crops. And so, we have a lot of stuff that we can benefit from there.
Absolutely. Well, and you think about the cost of putting seed into the ground, right? If the soil isn't ready for the seed, and the seed isn't even going to germinate and grow, maybe you stop putting the seed in the ground. But if you're 3 days past planting to get that answer, well, then you've wasted all that seed and you got to go back and get more. And, so big cost savings right there by having the real-time process back say, hey, whoa, this soil is not good. We need to treat this soil before we plant. Or maybe it's like, hey, this field actually just needs to be rotated this year. We need to plant something totally else, and then go against what the plan was. So there's all kinds of applications for the real-time data that comes back, and being able to push that compute out to where it needs to be just makes sense. So that's a pretty cool thing for edge computing applications.
Totally. Do you want to go next, or should I go next?
Go. Yeah.
Okay, here's my next one. Where is my in here? Oh yeah, this guy. All right, this is another thing that came up on my Twitter. This is the mouse I have. And Jason, have you heard of a vertical mouse before I mentioned it?
I was yesterday's days old when I heard of a vertical mouse.
These
I've
things
heard of
are
like
awesome.
the CAD mouse, and maybe that's a vertical mouse as well, but maybe it's just slightly different. But they have the mouses that have a vertical button that has a whole bunch of
Mm,
different stuff for like CAD applications. But
okay.
for a like apples to apples mouse, I have never heard of a vertical mouse before.
Yeah, this has been like an actual health benefit to me, and I think anybody who suffers from carpal tunnel should try them out. So this is my vertical mouse here, the exact one that's on the um, the website there. It's a Logitech one, not sponsored, by the way, but feel free to send me free stuff. So my vertical mouse, it kind of keeps your hand instead of being like this, and you have this natural bump in there. And I don't know if you used the Apple Magic Mouse before, but that thing it's way too flat, and naturally your hand kind of has this curve, or your wrist has this curve to it. And so with the vertical mouse, you can actually keep um, a proper angle with your hand instead, so your hand is vertical. And I found at the beginning of the of lockdowns and whatnot, I was spending more time at home, and previously, as a solutions engineer for F5, I was always out seeing customers, and so I was never really at home very much. Even though I was based out of home, I wasn't actually at home very much, and so I was always using a trackpad, and I never noticed any sort of carpal tunnel. And then I started to notice that right away when I was at home and spending all day at home instead with just a regular mouse, which I'd been using for a long time. And so this actually completely saved my hand. I think carpal tunnel is at least at bay for me at this point. And I actually rotate between that and my Apple Magic Trackpad as well, because I do like the trackpad. I do find no matter
Representing.
what, yeah, these are great. I think I do like that movement, and I do find that if I do use the vertical mouse too much, no matter what, I'm still kind of getting a little bit sore on that. So I switch between the two, and it alleviates my wrist pain quite a bit. So that's another thing I'm very thankful for.
That's cool. Well, sticking with health benefits, one of the technologies that I put out on Facebook, and my dad actually posted in robotic stent placements, and earlier this year, it was this summer. My dad had a health scare and went in and had some heart issues, and if you look back for years ago, anytime any kind of heart surgery meant they're cracking your sternum and spreading your rib cage and going at it. And the risk involved with that, the recovery from that, it's pretty traumatic. But with this, I mean, they can send robots in through your veins or arteries, and they can do those placements. Very limited invasiveness and real good success from that. So the health advances in technology to be able to go up in your body through small microscopic means, I think is fascinating. And you talk about magic technologies, those kinds of things are like magic. You're like, how does that even work?
Yeah. Can you imagine being the first person to come up with that and being like, "Listen, I got this idea. We're gonna take your arteries, and we're gonna shove stuff inside of there and repair you from literally from the inside out." Um, might have sounded crazy at first, but I'm glad
Yeah.
that kind of
Well,
stuff
even things
exists.
like LASIK, right? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to put you on a table. We're going to put a laser in there to slice your eyeball open. We're going to fold a flap back. And oh no, I think the flap is an actual knife, right? They
Mhm.
they slice you with a little blade. They pull your cornea back, and then they shoot lasers into your eyeball, and then they slap that little thing back. It's like, after
Yeah,
until it had been done a lot, I'm like, yeah, no thanks. No
yeah.
thanks.
I
But
I don't want to be the pilot user for that. Although it's something on the list for me to do at some point. So I will.
yeah,
I'll get there, I think.
yeah,
I think we've blown through the time, Jason. That was we were chatting before about how we should have a lot to talk about today, and certainly we did. So here we are at the top of the hour. Before we go, I do want to highlight a few things that we have coming up here. So first of all, on Tuesday, John is going to be back on with Security Sidebar and back on with John Cianfrani. That was a huge hit, that show, going into the dark web. He's going to go deeper into the dark web. I'm not going to say too much otherwise because John's actually coming on at the end to close out the show, and he'll talk about that a little bit more. On the 11th, there's going to be discussion around the new OWASP Top 10. We have a guest on for that. Jason, do you remember our guest? It was Sean.
I don't. I'm sorry. I don't remember his name.
From one of the OWASP chapters. And so that's going to be a great show to get everybody up to date on that, because that usually comes up in any sort of security environment is what are you going to do to address the OWASP Top 10? On the 16th, Jason, you're going to be on with the core, all the proxies. You want to share any highlights from that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to go into great detail. We're going to look at the history of the word proxy and where that came from, and then work our way through, what is a proxy generally, what happens in society, how do proxies work, and then we're going to get into the brass tacks of proxies as it relates to technology and how F5 implements them, the types of proxies, the locations of proxies, because you've got sidecar proxies, half proxies, full proxies, reverse proxies, forward proxies, residential proxies, data center proxies. We could go on and on and on. So there's all kinds of different ways that word is used. And so, at the end of the day, it's all the same. It's just, where does it sit and what services ride on top of that. And so we'll provide some clarity in all of that. And I have special guest, Mr. Kevin Stewart. For those of you who have asked a question on DevCentral, I'm sure you know who Kevin is. So he's going to join me for that show. It's going to be a lot of fun.
That's going to be a lot of brain power on one show. I'm looking forward to that.
There you go.
One. Yeah, thanks for highlighting that.
Stepanian. So thank you. Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to that show actually, because the OWASP Top 10 changed a lot, and not just thinking about like actual specific vulns, but like maybe vuln categories. And so there was a little bit of upheaval and controversy around, the effectiveness of the OWASP Top 10 with that kind of an approach and change. So I'm really looking forward to that conversation.
Yeah, that one should be cool. On the 18th, we'll have the 2021 TLS report. We teased this previously before, but we will have this on the 18th with David Warburton. A lot of time went into the research for the TLS report. A lot of people look forward to this one. That'll be a great one to have. And then we also mentioned this earlier as well. The next top 5 will be F5 tech that we're thankful for. And so, stuff like what IQ Blackhawk has been talking about there. We're going to talk about that kind of stuff specifically on that show. So IQ Blackhawk, we'd love to have you back on that one in the comments as well, and just sharing your thoughts on F5 tech that you're thankful for. Otherwise, that is the roundup. So thank you, Jason, for joining me today. And otherwise, we will end off with a little bit of a teaser from John Wagnon. Otherwise, we'll see you next time, folks.
Take care, everyone.
Hey, everybody. John Wagnon here with DevCentral. If you're wondering where I am, I'm inside the dark web. Hey, if you're wondering what the dark web is, I had a chance to talk to John Cianfrani out of Shape Security about the dark web and what it is and what goes on there and all that stuff. And that was my last live stream with the Security Sidebar. But next Tuesday, November the 9th at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time, I'm going to be live streaming again with John Cianfrani, and we're going to talk about how people do what they do in the dark web. Things like credential stuffing and sneaker bots, how they buy up all those tickets or those shoes or, all that stuff in like 5 seconds. How do they stuff all the credentials into your bank account and try to log in as you? Where do they get the credentials, all that stuff? So there's lots of tools that they use. So we're going to kind of go deeper into the web and see not only what they do, because we kind of talked about that last time, but how do they do this stuff? So I would love for you to join me as we dive deeper into the dark web.